Hey everyone, and thanks for tuning in. I'm Alan Vey, Aventus Network CEO, and this is our second community AMA where me and other members of the senior team ask you guys for your questions. As you may already know, unlike many blockchain projects where sort of hype comes before fundamentals to everyone's disappointment, we have been very much focused on building the technology to support enterprise partnerships, as fundamentals always win long term in our perspective. We're on a journey to process 1 billion Layer 2 transactions, and the Aventus community can earn their share of fees through the validator registration program, which is the Aventus staking program. We've just put out a nice new guide on that, so please do pay attention. We're already in the middle of processing more than 18 million transactions, and if you'd like to participate, you can do so at aventus.io/ecosystem. In the last couple of weeks, we joined the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance to build out our network of Ethereum network partners, and we extended the validator registration program to allow for a few big upcoming announcements in the next few weeks. So make sure you follow us on Twitter, Telegram, and are part of our newsletter to not miss those announcements. The staking program is already over 80% full and could be completely full at any time soon. So with that said, let's jump into the AMA. So question, for businesses, what difference is it to go with Matic versus Aventus? We've got a little bit of a sort of competitor landscape that you can see on our website and in our white paper, which outlines how we think the differences are between us and some of the sort of key competitors. I mean, ultimately it comes down to design decisions often. If you look at Aventus, the core of our traction is in more traditional sectors. You know, we've got the ticketing piece, we've got various other applications. If you look at Atmatic or Polygon, it seems to be more of a hub for DeFi. So that's one of the key things. There's different design decisions or sort of trade-offs that you choose within those different sectors. But ultimately, we all have very similar offerings, right? It's about where we can find core value add within the network. Everybody's faster, cheaper, more stable, whilst preserving that Ethereum sort of security. One thing that I would add with Aventus is we're built on Substrate and part of the Polkadot ecosystem, which means we are much more able to sort of plug into the various different pockets of value. Yes, on Ethereum, but also beyond. We see more and more traction on other sort of core base layer 1 blockchains, and Polkadot obviously very efficiently allows us to access those. So that's the sort of thing that you'd want to be looking at when comparing different layer 2 solutions and the sort of value add that they can bring to you. So the next question is a bit of a sort of future looking question about reputation systems and how you could look at that with respect to the token. Now, many of these ideas, I mean, they're quite theoretical right now. I don't think anybody has fully implemented an end-to-end production version of some of this. They're definitely considered, but right now, if you look at almost all layer 2 solutions that promise the sort of throughput that we do, nobody is bumping up against the full capacity of a layer 2 solution. So our focus is very much in maximizing the number of transactions coming onto the network and filling up the idle capacity that already exists today before worrying about how we would then necessarily differentiate that, because we don't even know where the limit is. We could scale horizontally some of these things. There's also further optimization to be done to increase transactions per second. So there's so many different ways of looking at how the future of these systems would progress. I think we need to worry about serious blockchain adoption first before we really start looking at how we might sort of differentiate the origin of those transactions. Now, of course, spam attacks are possible within any system, but well, spam attacks, we're talking almost like a denial of service attack, right? Where you just kind of hit something with as much volume as you can. Now, the nice thing with the economics base baked in and people having to pay, even if people choose to do that, it's a very, very expensive option given the sort of throughput that these systems can handle. So, and ultimately, people sending transactions benefits the validators because they're earning fees from them. So it's not something we're actively preventing against, but of course, as I was saying before, the closer we get to full capacity, the more and more these sort of things become an issue. But that's a problem for, I would say, a year or two down the line right now. Next question is around, is there any plans to implement withdrawal fees for several months at a time in the validator registration scheme? So as part of the Gateway API, what we are intending to do is move the full validator registration scheme into the Aventus network. So fees will be paid in the Aventus network, and then everybody can transact much more effectively. Because yes, right now, of course, with the problems that we have in Ethereum, it can be quite expensive to sort of withdraw any of the fees associated with it. So we're fully moving this into the AVN as and when that becomes possible. Next question is around getting involved in the validator registration scheme and asking if people can contribute sort of multiple times from the same origin address. Yes, that is definitely possible. It's not a risk. You're already registered. You've agreed to the terms and conditions, and you've specified who you are as a person and have been accepted. Therefore, the sort of various requirements we have to permit you are done, and you can contribute more AVT in later rounds if you so choose. The next question is around sending AVT to a MetaMask wallet. Is MetaMask the preferred wallet to use? So yes, we suggest you use MetaMask. We've got a detailed guide. We've just released a new one now on a step-by-step guide on what it's like to get involved, how you can become a staker, how you can start adding value to the to the Aventus Network ecosystem through staking your AVT. So yes, please go and have a read of that. It should give you all of the information that you need. So the difference between Aventus and Optimism is another question now. So from a technical perspective, we've taken quite different design choices, right? Again, in our white paper, you can see a little bit of an analysis from our perspective on how we think we differ in the competitive landscape. But Optimism is a solution which allows you to write your own smart contracts, essentially, and run them in a more performant manner. This is not something that we provide. Our nodes themselves, through Substrate, you can build various palettes which extend the functionality, but every single node, every single validator will have to agree to add that extension of functionality to their node. So what that means is you can't have as many people creating various different applications, but our hope is the applications that do get built, like our NFT support and now is robust, it's gone through significantly more testing, so the resulting applications built with them are more robust. But it's obviously not a solution that necessarily gives the same flexibility. So it's just a difference in design decision. Again, when choosing a layer 2 solution, if people are as sophisticated already to know they want blockchain, they know their use case, which layer 2 solution are they going for? It's about understanding the trade-off between a system that is more general purpose, but therefore slightly slower and less performant, or less general purpose, but more performant and more interoperable. And there's no right way, it comes down to the business use case. So the next question is, how does the Aventus Validator staking program differ from other in the ecosystem? So I believe your question here is asking, how are we different in terms of staking than other staking programs? So if you look at staking, with Aventus, what you're doing is you're becoming a validator. You're doing early registration now in phase 1 to actually become a validator and run the software yourself in later phases, which means you're very much, it's like being a miner in the Bitcoin or Ethereum ecosystems, right? You are adding value to the network through staking. So your stake, because of a proof of stake system, is obviously your probability of selection to process transactions, and therefore your stake as well. That can be penalized if anything is done fraudulently. And so it's much more analogous to a node or something. If you look at other staking programs, you have staking programs, you could consider liquidity pool staking to a degree, where you earn, the return you're earning is fees of people actually trading between different assets. There's staking programs where there are stable coins, like sort of stable coins that are maintaining an algorithmic peg to some currency, and they pay out as and when they deviate from that peg. So staking is a general term of just foregoing liquidity to, in some shape or form, add value to a protocol. In Aventus, the value being added is the processing of transactions of people actually using the Aventus network, but there are many different ways of building staking programs. The next question again is saying Matic potentially achieves 7,200 transactions per second where we do 2,000. Again, the question is, things can be horizontally scaled, further optimization can be done. This is a test that was run with ideal scenarios. I'm not sure how the Matic test came about, but these are headline numbers to show people that we are so beyond the current capabilities that it's not even necessarily material what the final number is. And nobody can say they can actually do the numbers without having proven it in production with client use cases, which nobody has reached yet because nobody has that kind of adoption. So my point is still similar in that we know right now for what we have been processing and where we're going, we have significant bandwidth. We know various ways of optimizing our system, and on top of optimizing just the single system, horizontally scaling that system. So we feel very confident we can deal with any of the usage that is tangibly going to come to the blockchain industry in the next years and beyond. And it's already significantly bigger numbers than any of the sort of layer ones are able to achieve. So the value add and the value add to the sort of anybody using these systems is there, and only the future can tell where we ultimately are able to get to. Now remember, Visa, MasterCard networks are already around these numbers. So there's a question of, do we ever need to scale beyond that? Only the future will tell as to how people use these systems, but we very much build in an agile, iterative way, right? We know ways that things can be improved, but there's no point in dedicating resource to areas that can give us greater vanity numbers that don't actually help the fundamental utility of how our system is adopted and how we're delivering value today. So that's why we are where we are. We feel the numbers that we can show are definitely sufficient for the use cases that we're going after and for any layer 2 use case, and the future will see where we end up going ultimately. Today, transactions are processed by Aventus internal validator nodes. In the future, will I need a computer always on to run my own node? So we are rolling out through 3 phases, as everybody knows from the terms and conditions that they've agreed to as part of the staking program. In the next phase, we move to nominated proof of stake. We're following the Polkadot launch process. So we'll probably have a few academic institutions, various other people who are willing to run nodes and have high quality sort of infrastructure to support that. And then ultimately anybody should be able to get involved as a validator. So yes, but there are various ways. You don't necessarily have to run it on your computer. We will likely facilitate sort of images that can be deployed in cloud environments. So maybe you can do like the sort of 3-click marketplace that Amazon offers or AWS offers, that kind of a thing, to make it as simple and effective and easy as possible for people to interact with our ecosystem. Like we said, we're always about trying to drive those fundamentals. And long term, this will be handed over to the community to also decide how it rolls out. So I have no doubt that that will exist at some point, but that's not high up on the roadmap, at least for this year. Okay, that pretty much wraps everything. As always, thank you for your questions. I hope the answers are helpful, and we will be running more of these. So please, anything else you want to ask, get in touch and we will answer it as soon as possible.